Hello, I am Mayor Watt. That is ohmTown.com, and this is the ohmTown Daily News Show for, oh my gosh, is it really the 17th already? It's pretty shocking. September 17th, 2022. I'm going to get right into it. It's already 6 o'clock. Let me turn down my music a little bit. Y'all can't hear that music, I hope. Maybe you want to hear the music more than me, but let's get into today's news. Got a pretty broad gamut of articles. There's going to be some political stuff, so if you're not interested in that kind of stuff, about halfway through this, we're going to end up talking a little bit about some political things, mainly because it's in the social aspect of things. And nowadays when I talk to people about the merging of business, technology, and society, it usually is in the context of to some degree, a political element in it with a whole lot of tech, because society really doesn't know about the goings on if it wasn't for technology. In the macro sense and in the micro sense, we wouldn't know about these little elements of activity in society, which really should either encourage you or outrage you one way or the other, depending on what it is. There's a whole bunch of stuff in between, of course, but we all have certain motivations. And in this particular instance, we know about this because the actions went viral. But before we get into all of that, let's just start going through all of the news that I've dug up through the aggregator over at ohmTown.com. You should see a marked increase in the speed of ohmTown.com. I got rid of the ad entirely. That actually was weighing the site down dramatically. The cost of that in terms of you visiting the site was rather spectacular. So it slowed it down so much that people were bowing out based on my interactions with some people regarding the speed of the site. And other functionality was diminished as well. I've removed it almost entirely. So it's largely focusing on news aggregation, and then the back end of it is for you to post comments if you so like. Something as simple as a Giphy. Voting has been disabled, at least for now. I've upgraded servers. It still didn't speed things up. So it's really a matter of the functionality that I had added, just weighing down the engine too much. So we'll revisit it as time goes on, and I'll stick to the minimum viable product over at ohmTown.com. With that in mind, we're going to stop talking about the inside baseball stuff and start talking about the news. Patagonia's founder, big donation potentially saves him over $1 billion in taxes. And the article continues to go on and say, and shows how the wealthy aren't subject to the same rules as the rest of us. That's indeed what I've been saying for decades. It's actually why I left global finance. I really was kind of burnt out in, backroom deals and buddyism and nepotism that you would want to vomit about. It was very frustrating for me to see qualified candidates for jobs and other functions being passed up because there's a direct hire type of authority out there that just scooped up who they thought was a friend or recommended by a friend. And it's much harder to fire somebody than it is to hire somebody, particularly when there's nepotism involved. And you might think, well, nepotism is about family. No. Nepotism is not. It's showing favoritism towards somebody in a professional environment, in a workplace. So, yeah, it goes a little bit more beyond that. And I've been saying for years and years that everybody's equal, but money somehow makes more those people, the ultra rich, more equal than everybody else. And when you can make a big donation, apparently it has the ability to save somebody taxes. Yvon Chouinard said on Wednesday that he's giving away Patagonia's wealth to help fight climate change. The donation could save the Patagonia founder's family over $1 billion in taxes, experts calculated. It shows how wealthy people don't pay taxes in the same way everyone else does. Well, it's to fight climate change, so I guess that's okay. It was the business proclamation heard around the world, Patagonia's founder, Yvon Chouinard. I may not be pronouncing that correctly, and frankly, I don't really care. Was giving away his company's wealth to fight climate change. Yeah, company wealth. Why not their wealth? What wasn't heralded so loudly is he could be avoiding more than $1 billion in taxes in doing so. Instead of going public, you could say, "We're going purpose," Chouinard said in a statement. Yeah, and instead of paying taxes. Juliana Kaplan and Grace Kay are the author of this. And I don't know, it rings hollow, but a lot of people are going to poo-poo me. I've experienced this in the past when I say, well, donate privately. Why do you have to benefit publicly from your declaration of donating to a good cause? It became even more irritating when I hear about, Amber Heard saying that they donated $7 million and then that actually never came into existence. And you hear it again and again and again, and it's just unsettling to me. You give because you see a purpose, not necessarily because your name is going to get plastered or you're going to get a tax benefit. Earlier this year, another businessman from a different side of the political spectrum, Chicago's Barry Seed, or Seed, I'm not sure how to pronounce that either, used a similar structure to donate his $1.6 billion business to a nonprofit that advocates for conservative causes, including restricting abortion rights and appointing conservative judges to the federal bench, according to a report in the New York Times. It goes on and on and on. And I always just kind of get irritated by this because we are building basically American oligarchs, and we are building this heroism type of mentality around the ultra rich, when really they have taken so much and given so little, simply because they had the means to provide a service or product or whatever else. It says here that they were able to avoid paying taxes on the sale of his business, an electronics manufacturer called Triplite, which, if you don't know about that, is basically a power company, a power distribution company, in terms of power distribution, like power strips at the enterprise level, as well as standard home use, amongst other things, by donating it to the nonprofit Marble Freedom Trust. So now I get to just do an embargo on Triplite. And yeah, I mean, if that's what the objective of this person was, to give it to ultra conservative wingnut enterprise, I would never have known about it. But you have to pick and choose, because if you actually peel back the layers of onion that relates to any product, eventually you come to a point where you'd go, well, this is just disgusting. It's a lot of people say don't meet your heroes because you won't like what you actually see beyond the first layer. And call me a cynic, I guess. It's becoming true. So at any rate, there's more over at this article. And so let me throw it up into the chat. I'll be posting the podcast version of this, not this, but yesterday's podcast later today. I wanted to see if Twitch automatically launched my show over to YouTube, but it didn't in 24 hours. So I did it manually, and I'll have to do this manually again. That's what turns it into a podcast. I throw it over to YouTube, and then I grab it as a podcast from there. At any rate, That's Patagonia's founder avoiding over 1 billion in taxes. So to put this in perspective, why am I not really hip to this idea of avoiding taxes as a member of society? It's because it pays for schools, it pays for firefighters and police and good roads and plumbing and all kinds of stuff, even though we pay into it again and again in different ways and different modes, right? Retail taxes and whatnot, and businesses pay into it with payroll tax. And there's taxes all over the place, but it all culminates in facilitating society's forward motion. And when you stall that, everybody suffers, particularly education. And you have to have an educated populace. What the wingnuts really want us to not be educated, because when people are uh, uneducated, you have to become street smart, and you basically just go survival. And it's wholly different than being able to do fundamental research and better society. It's really when you don't get a solid holistic education, um, at least finishing high school. Salary becomes an issue. The ability to uh, become an ongoing concern as a citizen of society. You will lean more towards that survival. And when you run up against problems and you don't have an option, there aren't any support services because government is hobbled to provide those. And so you lean over to something else that provides it. And you can imagine what provides it, as long as you have faith in the system. Let's move on to the next article. Knives Out, Weird Al, and more. 8 great movies from TIFF 2022. I don't know if you've heard about this. Weird Al has a movie. Well, it's a biopic. Looks great. Haven't seen it. Knives Out is another version of Knives Out. The first one was epic. I loved it. I love Weird Al too. But let's go check out what these other movies are. It's over at The Verge. And they have a new entertainment section, I guess, because I've never aggregated anything from The Verge in an entertainment section. Thought that was interesting. So I clicked it. Anyway, this mix of overwhelmed yet refreshed is exactly how the author felt. Oh, you know what? I didn't say in that last. Yeah, I said it in the last one, but I didn't give credit in this one. Andrew Webster over at The Verge wrote this article. And it says in it, this mix of overwhelmed yet refreshed is exactly how they felt after spending the last week at the 2022 iteration of TIFF. So it's the Toronto International Film Festival. If you didn't know what TIFF is, I didn't know what TIFF is. And they didn't get to see everything that they hoped for. In particular, they couldn't squeeze Park Chan-wook's new film, Decision to Leave, into their schedule, and their ticket for the now controversial The People's Joker was canceled. But they got to see others. There's one called Broker. It says here, a sweet road trip about selling babies. Not sure how I feel about that. Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. It's a whodunit franchise. And really, that's what actually turns a single movie into a franchise, is if you keep on using the terminology in it and make it a series. And it actually gives you more protection in terms of copyright and trademark. Godland, it says here, come for the beautiful Icelandic landscapes, stay for the rumination on life and faith. The next one is called Goodnight Oppie, or I guess Oppie, right? That's from Opportunity, right? Yeah. So a space documentary with a touch of Star Wars. And the Mars rover just found what amounts to the possibility of how can I phrase this so as not to come across like I'm saying that there's aliens up there? Organic matter. There you go. In the rocks that were drilled into recently. day before yesterday, I think it was, that they announced it. Hunt is what the author calls an unrelenting spy thriller from the star of Squid Game. Not sure how that will pan out. There's Pearl. Mia Goth shines in this slasher origin story. So I'll end up watching this one because I kind of dig horror movies of one kind or another. And then the Weird Al movie called, or biopic called Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I've never seen this picture, but yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch. Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al Yankovic. And Weird Al kind of got his start with a late night radio show, which I used to listen to replays of, I guess, on the beach. And it was always fun to listen to this stuff. I don't know. It's just a lot of fun. And then Wendell and Wild, an excellent stop motion adventure from the minds behind Coraline and Nope, which that's going to just make it spectacular. Coraline was a great stop motion film. And you just can't walk away from anything that Jordan Peele puts together. So I'm going to be all over that one. And it says that it's going to start streaming on Netflix on October 28th. I'm not sure about the others. The Roku channel is for Weird Al. Apparently it's coming to Roku on November 4th. Pearl is coming to theaters on September 16th. So that was yesterday. Hunt doesn't have a release date. Goodnight Oppie starts streaming on Prime Video on November 23rd. And Godland doesn't say when it's going to receive wider release, according to the article. And Glass Onion Knives Out Mystery starts streaming on Netflix on December 23rd. It cannot come soon enough. It'll be in select theaters at some point before then, according to the article. And Broker's coming to theaters on December 26th. And I think that's it. So if you want to read more of the minutia of this article, please go over to The Verge. Again, Andrew Webster is the author of this article. I dig a lot of these. We'll see if I can watch all of them. The next article is all about Constantine coming back and Keanu Reeves coming back as Constantine. I've been actually sacrificing gummy bears to the gods to bring Constantine back. With or without Keanu Reeves, please find another charismatic demonologist, superhero, demigod who has died and returned to fight evil in its many faces. I want John Constantine forever. It's just awesome world building. And here, this article's little snippet over on ohmTown.com says John Constantine's demonic detective work isn't over just yet. Keanu Reeves is set to return in the titular, or as the titular demonologist and exorcist. Exorcist? Man, a person who exorcises, and not like weightlifting demons, but anyway. In a sequel to the 2005 film Constantine, according to reports from Deadline and Variety. This is actually aggregated from The Verge as well. Both outlets confirmed that Warner Brothers, that was a hot ass that just made my ears ring. Oh my goodness, that was rough. Anyway, both outlets confirmed that Warner Brothers is working on a follow-up film, which also brings back writer Akiva Goldsman and director Francis Lawrence. Who initially made his debut with Constantine, but has since gone on to helm movies like The Hunger Games and I Am Legend. I dug both of them. At least The Hunger Games in the original, I liked. Just, I don't know, I kind of beat it down in the rest of them, but it is what it is. And I Am Legend was the first time, I think. Let me make sure. I just want to make sure of this statement before I go into it. Yeah, I think I think it's pretty much the first time that there's like a zombie-like creature that is super fast and highly intelligent, and cares about it actually having offspring. I think that's the first time that I ever saw that embodiment of any of those, let alone a trifecta that would ultimately end up wiping out humanity. Um, and then Days Gone, I think it is the next time that I see something like that. So, where a plague turns people into monsters, zombies. Let's go over to the article at The Verge, and Emma Roth is the author. I think The Verge had a new paint job since I last did any aggregation from them. So looks pretty cool. It's more cyberpunky, I guess you could say. John Constantine's demonic detective work isn't over just yet. No, I hope that it never ends, as a matter of fact. But Keanu Reeves does need a break, I would say. At some point, he is going to have to go, you know what? It's time to just move on to something else. He builds motorcycles in his free time. Pretty spectacular looking motorcycles. I will never own one, but that's okay. I can appreciate them from afar. Both outlets confirmed that Warner Brothers is working on the follow-up. Other versions of the DC comic book character Constantine have since appeared in NBC's adaptation that ran from 2014 to 2015, and more recently, the Netflix's The Sandman. But this marks Reeves' return to the role after nearly 2 decades. I'm not a big fan of DC comic book characters, but Constantine is spectacular. Let's see here. It says an Abrams produced Constantine spinoff was supposed to air on HBO Max as well, but sources tell Deadline and Variety that it's been canceled after 2 years of development. The series, which was rumored to closely follow the Hellblazer comic that Constantine hails from, marks another casualty resulting from Warner Brothers' merger with Discovery. Man. And the more I hear and read and see this merger, it's going to be like the AOL of I don't know, this decade, in that there's so much momentum that Warner Brothers is just going to keep on moving along with Discovery, dragging it in its wake, or the other way around. I don't even know really which is going to be dragged where, but man, I don't like anything coming out of this Warner Brothers merger with Discovery. But I'm gonna like Constantine as he comes back, probably because it's Keanu Reeves bringing his charisma to the screen. Okay, so let's move on to the next article, and this one is a 31,000-year-old Stone Age skeleton reveals the world's oldest limb amputation. I'm just going to click on this and take us straight over to businessinsider.com just to speed things up a little bit. Bethany Dawson is the author of this, and it says a skeleton who has gone through the world's earliest limb amputation. It gives a fascinating insight into the medical abilities of people in the Stone Age. So I find this really interesting. Without getting too far afield of where it is, how do we know? Why do we know? And what is it that we know about this? This here says that it's this Stone Age skeleton remains of a young person found in East Kalimantan, Indonesia, missing their tibia and fibula, the bones between the knee and ankle. The precision with which the bones were cut off means they were surgically amputated. So this dates back to 31,000. So I don't know what it is that's in this video that's pinwheeling in the corner of this Business Insider article from Bethany Dawson. I don't blame Bethany Dawson for this, but in an article about a skeleton and the amputation of tibia and fibula of a human being, that video does not look like it should be there because it's not. It just looks like ground meat. Anyway, maybe it's just me, but thankfully it's pinwheeling. Anyway, the researchers explained that the findings show that foraging groups in tropical Asia had developed sophisticated medical knowledge, including surgery and aftercare, many thousands of years before it was initially thought. Previously, the earliest recorded amputation was carried out 7,000 years ago on a Neolithic farmer in France. Every time I hear something like that, we are from France, it makes me think of the Coneheads, which not everybody understands that, but that's okay. The authors wrote the surrounding tissue, including veins, vessels, nerves, were exposed and negotiated in such a way that allowed this individual to not only survive, but also continue living with altered mobility. How they know about that, I don't know. Because none of that would have survived, obviously. But maybe healing and possible regrowth of anything else in the area may have resulted in explanation that the person survived long enough to whatever their new lifestyle was going to be, showed that they survived. So the article actually says they explain the intensive post-operative care of the patient, including temperature regulation, bathing, wound care, and disinfection would have been vital for the patient. We are giving our modern context to that. But there may not have been any of that. It was basically cut that leg off. How they sewed it up and what they sewed it up with, no clue. Um, I just struggle because this is actually archaeology is one of my first passions, and I've always found it quite interesting that people can extrapolate and give a modern context to something that happened apparently 31,000 years ago. Well, maybe we actually did know much more than we knew. We assume we knew back then, but there were fewer people. There were natural disasters that basically expunged knowledge. It's siloed within people. We really just don't know. I mean, there's a lot of assumptions of what actually has happened in our historical record. And we peel back those layers of assumption, saying from one person to another, well, you don't really know what went on, so this is what I am saying. And then it's up to academia primarily to say, yeah, we buy into that. Says the study changed their perception of the past, believes Dr. Dilks Hall. Archaeologists have previously described Southeast Asia as a cultural backwater, and that there's always been this trope that not a lot happened here or there. These findings now change that. I think a lot happened everywhere, and we just don't know because biological processes just are wiped out, and only a select few things fall within the natural global processes to a point where it can continue on. And then when we dig deep enough, we find out, oh, look, there was actually something here. From every single continent on the planet, we discover more as we dig down. And I've always asked people, why is it that we have to dig down? How is it that so much is buried? Oh, well, I don't really get a response to that, depending on who I'm talking to. And some people say, well, it just happens naturally. All right. Let's move on to the next article. This is a classic example of burning down the house to keep warm. Yeshiva University halts all student clubs to block LGBTQ group from forming. Earlier this week, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed a ruling to stand for now that required the university to recognize the group, and in response, the school shut it all down. So this is a university that's up in New York. I think has one in New Jersey, a campus in New Jersey. And it says the move came 2 days after the U.S. Supreme Court had ordered the university to recognize a student group. In a 5-4 vote, the justices said that the university would first have to make its arguments in the Supreme Court of New York, in New York state courts before returning to the Supreme Court. Strike what I said earlier. And it says if applicants seek and receive neither expedited review nor interim relief from the New York courts, they may return to this court, the Supreme Court order said. So they basically said it stands, but you have to go talk to the New York courts. You can't bring it straight to us. So, citing the upcoming Jewish holidays, the university sent out a terse, unsigned email at mid-afternoon on Friday that said it would hold off on all undergraduate activities while it planned its next steps to follow the roadmap provided by the U.S. Supreme Court. I find it quite fascinating. And to me, it's wait. Let me continue reading this. The universities did not say for how long the suspension would last or whether it would be revisited. A statement says every faith-based university in the country has the right to work with its students, including its LGBTQ students, to establish the clubs, places, and spaces that fit within its faith tradition. Yeshiva University simply seeks that same right of self-determination. All right. You can read the rest of this over at New York Times. A farmer discovers a rare ancient treasure. I clicked this simply because of the cover of the book. I have no idea what's going on behind this. It says a Palestinian farmer in the Gaza Strip has discovered a rare mosaic on his property. I love finding this stuff, and I always find it interesting that things are just buried a couple of feet down. Why is everything buried just a couple of feet down? I'm going to pause this because they broke away from they broke away from the actual article in this video. So if you're watching, apologies. This is over at ABC News by Faris Akram from Associated Press. And it says a Palestinian farmer in the Gaza Strip has discovered a rare mosaic on their property. And it says the discovery set off excitement among archaeologists, and the territory's Hamas rulers are planning a major announcement in the coming days. There's a lot. If you peel back the layer of the onion of this, there's a lot to talk about. It says the mosaic was uncovered just a kilometer from the Israeli border, the floor boasting 17 iconographies of beasts and birds is well preserved, and its colors are bright, albeit dirty because it's been buried under a foot and a half of something, dirt. These are the most beautiful mosaic floors discovered in Gaza, both in terms of the quality of the graphic representation and the complexity of the geometry, says Renee Elter, an archaeologist from the French Biblical and Archaeological School of Jerusalem. Never have mosaic floors of this fineness or finesse. Finesse. I was going to say it actually means, I thought that it would say fineness, but it's actually finesse. This precision in the graphics and richness of the colors been discovered in the Gaza Strip. Shocking, right? I'm not quite sure what this means, other than there is probably just a ton more. But I'm not sure if they'll be able to get to it all, depending on what the population density is in that particular area. The Gaza Strip has an extremely high population density. Elter says the mosaic pavement dates back to a time between the 5th and 7th centuries, but he said a proper excavation must be conducted to determine when it was built exactly, and whether it was part of a religious or secular complex. We'll find out as time goes on. They go into much greater detail about the history, and Hamas bulldozers destroyed large parts of a site containing remains. But this goes on back and forth since history. Just It just hasn't stopped. So this back and forth conflict. So let's move on. Uh, Hopefully, another article will come up and include greater detail about the mosaic. Um, but the history is complex. Less so depending on which side of the fence you're on. But when you look at it from beyond arm's reach, it is complex. This is the beginning of the more political aspects of the show. I do have a couple that at the end articles. There's, I think, two. These two articles are really going to be political in nature because I think that this is a criminal activity done by a governor of Florida in conjunction with others. But let's get into that. This is in the Hatch Ideas channel, mainly because it's sourced from businessinsider.com. Migrants sent to Martha's Vineyard say that they were duped by a woman named Perla who paid them $200 and promised a better life in Massachusetts. And while they may actually receive that better life, it's still fraud. Migrants who were flown to Martha's Vineyard with little information say they were conned, and that's the fact. That's their belief that they were frauded. They were defrauded of what was really going to happen. Okay. They weren't, according to Reuters, some of the migrants aboard a flight said that a woman paid them $200 to go. The woman did not give her last name, approached the migrants outside of a San Antonio shelter. Some of the migrants who red state governors flew to Martha's Vineyard for political purposes. Okay, so keep in mind, they were paid $200 to go. They were given little information and lied to that there was going to be a better life in Massachusetts. And again, while it may be true, it wasn't because of Perla and it wasn't because of the people who are using them as pawns in a political process. Said that they were duped by a woman who approached them outside that shelter, right? So let's go over to the article. It's by Azmi Haroon, and it's from businessinsider.com. And we know what the purpose of this was, but they were used as political pawns to drive home a point about immigration. Okay, we get it. The problem is they were, in my definition, based on the actual definitions of two things, they were trafficked. And I'll get to this. I'll get to how this should play out. And I'm hoping that the federal government actually does this. Some of the migrants who red state governors flew to Martha's Vineyard for political purposes said that they were duped by a woman. So you have the fraud. Some of the migrants told Reuters that this woman, Perla, paid them $200. Again, a Venezuelan migrant who was approached by the woman said that she also made them sign a liability waiver and did not share her last name. So there's no meeting of the minds. There is no liability waiver that could actually be enforced because they didn't know where they were actually ending up. They didn't know what they were actually ending up doing. They don't know why they were going there, and they didn't even know who the person was. So it says here, we were scared. I hope they give us help. That's what they told Reuters. Florida has siphoned $12 million in public funds to coordinate migrant flights. DeSantis' spokesperson told Fox News Digital on Thursday that the trips were related to Florida's relocation program to transport illegal immigrants to sanctuary destinations. But it's public funds, so why not donate that to them? Build housing, educate, give them opportunity. This whole country was basically founded on immigrant flight and then oppressive behavior from the dawning of time. Might makes right. When there was a conflict, we locked the Japanese in essentially concentration camps. We drove everybody that was native, aboriginal to the United States, to this continent, I should say, because it wasn't United States. Drove them out after basically lying again and again. Then we embraced slavery and built the country on the backs of what would now be U.S. citizens historically, right? But they had to fight all the way into the late 70s and still today institutional racism. You can't avoid it. It's not a lie. It's not alternate facts. It exists. And across the spectrum of society, people will say, well, no, there's ample opportunity. No, there isn't. You will never be a billionaire. Not if you are not sociopathic, you will never be a billionaire. If you care about society, you will never be a billionaire. Because I hesitate. Now, I don't even hesitate. You show me one self-made billionaire where when we look back the layers of the onion, we don't see abuse. And I'll be surprised. But that's pretty much where that would end. And in this particular case, I think DeSantis should be charged with human trafficking. Because somebody on their behalf lied. $12 million was taken from public to devise this relocation program. If you want to build a wall, build a wall. If you want to stop immigration in your state, stop immigration in your state. But then you have to lose all of that public funding that facilitates immigration. But you're hobbling your own country. Because we aren't replacing human beings at the replacement rate that will support society in the future. If you haven't paid attention to that, you need to. Because if we don't repopulate, we will not be as capable as we are, not only in history, but in the future and now. We need more people. We need to educate more people. But this is just one step in this walking you into why DeSantis should be charged. So when I get there, this is what I want to draw attention to. Let me pull it up here. So, you know what? I won't be able to really fast. Mainly because I went searching for something else. But let me see if I can find it really quick. So, actually, it's in a different spot. But anyway. So let me just explain what human trafficking is. Human trafficking is the unlawful act of transporting or coercing people in order to benefit from their work or service, typically in the form of forced labor or sexual exploitation. Well, this is their service. They're being used as a pawn to drive home the point that they being a few wingnut leaders in a couple of states, saying that we need to do something about immigration, and these sanctuary destinations are the problem and the solution, right? Because we have this sanctuary idea in the United States, in certain states. Suddenly it's everybody's problem because the border isn't being patrolled adequately enough. But if you don't actually tax people so that you can protect your border, it is your state, right? That's what you like to say in Texas and in Florida. It's our state. We don't want the federal government in our state. Okay, well, tax your ultra rich people and protect your border. But you don't do that. You want to use everybody's money, which means not everybody buys into your ideology that those people are bad, because they certainly aren't. Sure, there's some, but you can't tell me that the people around you are all good, because you certainly aren't the ethical or moral compass that society needs to follow. Because I would never be able to sleep at night if I were to grab random people from some shelter and fly them to another state. It's the scumbaggiest thing you could possibly imagine. And to lie in the process to these people. So why is it also illegal? It's because it's fraud. They lied to them. They told them that there was something better for them elsewhere. Yeah, it's because they are very cognizant of the fact that they will not provide anything to anybody else, even using public money to send them somewhere else. It's kind of a shit thing to do. And on top of it, enriching an aviation company instead of spending that money on making these immigrants to the United States, give them shelter, give them education, give them an opportunity, just like everybody else as a human being within the United States, find a path to get them citizenship, make sure that they are embracing the United States culture of the melting pot mentality, and not isolating themselves within their particular niche of culture, and saying, everybody bring your culture to the United States. But remember, we are all a melting pot. And while we have our little enclaves of culture, we are all Americans. We're all a member of the society of the United States. And by proxy, a global society. But that's not what these people, these wingnuts, want. They spent $615,000 to send 50 migrants to Martha's Vineyard. Right? So these people wouldn't need a lot of money, depending on their age, more or less, and easier integration into the education system. They could be working for relatively low wage jobs until you find out what their skill set actually is. And then maybe they can apply for a job because you have shelter for them that has an address that allows them to apply for a job. They can apply for a green card. They can apply for, eventually, citizenship. Again, we're not replacing human beings in the United States at the replacement rate. Right? I think we're at like 1.8 or something like that. I think the oldest, so I'm looking back, we're at 2.1. Maybe. And there might be some numbers fiddling around there. So my understanding is we're at 1.8 in the United States. So 2 planes of 50 or with 50 migrants arrived, and that's 2 planes with 50. Okay. The planes were organized to help Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, closer to DeSatan, who used state funds, which, by the way, I have no dog in the hunt of religion. You can be whoever you want to be. But this is evil. Packing people into a plane, flying them off, and paying some plane $615,000 using state funds to fly a plane from Texas to Martha's Vineyard, but it was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis who used state funds to do it. So state records show that Florida paid an aviation company more than $500,000 for the transportation. Everybody involved in this is culpable for human trafficking, fraud, induced to leave the state, transported on an airplane to another state, and it is a political means. They were trafficked. So charge them with human trafficking. Okay, you would never find a non-sociopathic person considering this. Sarah Arshani, over at businessinsider.com is the one that wrote the article. 2 planes with 50 migrants arrived on Martha's Vineyard last week. The planes were organized to help the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who used state funds for the transport, and state records show Florida paid $615,000 to fly these 50 people. Everybody is a trash human there. Let's move on to the next article. And if you have a bone to pick with me about making this statement and my claim that I think this is all trash human mentality, it's sociopathic, it is reprehensible, then come to my chat, say something. That's fine with me. But be civil. I'm being civil here, so, and consider it an invitation to talk to me about this stuff. I'll even give you a phone number you can call, and I'll put you on camera up there if you want to do that. So this next article is in the Stock Marketeers channel. The moneyest is where it comes from by way of marketwatch.com. Things are rocky between us. Says this person who says, my girlfriend and I sold our Florida home. Our $200,000 profit was wired to her account, and she refuses to give me my fair share. What's my next move? Quote, I'm getting pushback when I've asked for my share of the proceeds. Well, buddy, you know how she's a girlfriend? Probably not anymore. Quentin Futrell is the author of this over at MarketWatch. What's your next move? Probably trying to figure out how you can build a time machine and get your money back. You're going to end up in court if your girlfriend doesn't voluntarily give it to you. And even the legal threat may not result in much. Probably because you didn't have an escrow account that was set up so that it would split it evenly. And since you're not married and it's Florida, I think you have zero chance of getting that money without an extreme fight. So this person says, Dear Quentin, so sending it over to Quentin Futrell, who I don't know what their, what their CV consists of, but at any rate, people are writing into this person. And they say their longtime girlfriend and I, not me, but the author, moved to Florida 3 years ago after renting a home for a year in an area that they liked. They bought a home together, and they were not, he or she, they, I don't know who they are. I don't know if it's male or female, but it doesn't matter. They were not working at the time. She was, so everybody agreed that she was the one that was put on the loan application. So, God, this person is painting a picture as if they were even Stevens in this thing, but that's not really what it looks like. What it looks like here is she was on the loan. She was bearing the risk, even though the credit score was higher than hers. However, they both were considered good scores, north of 725 and 800. Apparently his was above, or there, sorry. And it's hard to denote one from the other. But anyway, they believe that the mortgage loan originator thought that was the only right way to go, and they made an offer on the home, signed by both. and it was accepted. Well, the only one that really matters is the one on the loan application. Making an offer doesn't really matter. That's in my understanding, it doesn't even matter. You can sign anything you want to as an offer, but the person who's the mortgage holder is the one that's going to be taken into account. In fact, if the person who accepted it signed it and noted, hey, that person actually isn't on the mortgage, it wouldn't even matter because it isn't up to the person selling the house to say, yeah, we're totally on board. No, they don't care. They're accepting an offer. So they had the proceeds from the sale of the prior home, and she paid for many of the inspection costs herself. So additional risk, additional financial burden. We, quote unquote, we put down 20% for the purchase and took a mortgage for the rest. She did pay a larger portion of that 20% than the other person did. Both of their names are on the closing documents, those not specifically related to the mortgage. And both of their names were on the deed. So both actually own the property. The only one that is burdened by the mortgage is the girlfriend at this point. So regardless of intent, if he were to ditch her because their girlfriend, not married, I don't know how common law is going to play into this because depending on the length, and I'm not sure of the specifics in Florida about common law marriage. Anyway, there's a whole lot of everything is kind of tied together so far, but the only one that's really bearing the burden of the mortgage is the girlfriend. They also bought an adjacent vacant lot with his own cash or their own cash, the other party, not the girlfriend, and put both of the names on the deed. So he's literally getting in bed with his girlfriend, not realizing that, maybe she doesn't want to give you the money. 17 months later, they decided to sell the home. Looking back now, it looks like they may have sold at the top of the current Florida real estate boom and they got $200,000. Well, now it's been 5 months since the closing and things are rocky between us. I'm getting pushback when I've asked for my share of the proceeds, and my position is that we both should have all of our expenses reimbursed and the remaining proceeds should be split 50-50. And they believe that her expenses and costs for improvements, new appliances, inspections, etc., may amount to around $30,000, where theirs is even more in the area of $20,000. So, in this example, they would leave $150,000 to be split evenly. So, $75,000 apiece. And this person has had $25,000 transferred, leaving her with $175,000, and they feel that the other 70 is due. They feel that another 70 is due because they invested $20,000. All right. So are they wrong? Probably not in the perfect world. But if you piss somebody off and you're not married and you don't have some type of agreement that says split the proceeds, you're going to be fighting for it. So overall, this Quentin person, agrees with the logic of splitting the costs, and I do too. In the ethical sense of humanity, I would say everybody should be doing an accounting, but I think that it's going to turn into legal action. So Quentin says the same thing. Be prepared to take legal action if and when it becomes clear that she does not wish to split the proceeds fairly, but you both spent money on the property, and if your ex wants to push you into litigation, it would be wise to inform her that you may well end up owing you the full 50% of the proceeds, and that is $100,000 because you both paid the bills, invested in upgrades, both invested, and that she should probably split now, and literally split now. And it says, if she does not meet your deadline, set a deadline. And if she doesn't meet that deadline, lawyer up. You, though, will probably end up, um, well, she may spend a whole lot of money, and not have that $200,000 still there. So there, you're going to have to hire a PI, and you're going to um, have the lawyer threaten her with much more than just give us 50%, because this is, if she doesn't meet the requirement and she's grinding through all of the money, trying to claw it back is going to be impossible. And this turns into something much bigger. So unfortunately, it says here, also, though, the Quentin says another possible source of leverage, the other property that you purchased together. If you were to file a partition action to sell that property now, you would lose money and she would lose potentially hefty profit. So it makes sense for you and she to remain on good terms, regardless of the status of your relationship. Um, I got the impression that they sold everything, but maybe not. At any rate, um, I would probably, along with the notice to remove, well, to split whatever funds remain, I would probably also submit a quitclaim deed for that property so that it falls back to you, because out of your graciousness, you put her name on the deed, thinking that your relationship is either going to flourish or at least remain idle, and you were a derp to do that. Um, with a girlfriend, we all want to believe that everybody is going to be loving in perpetuity, but they don't make breakup songs because it never happens. So buying property, buying real property, you need a real partnership agreement until that partnership can be dissolved by marriage, or by the contract meeting its rightful end, whatever it might be. Sell the property, hold it forever, and lease it out, or whatever. It doesn't matter. You have to be practical, um, up until you are married, and even then, there are times where you may go, well, I want this or that, a prenup or whatever. It's practical when great wealth is involved, um, or the expectation of potential future great wealth. Not everybody requires it or wants it, and a lot of people think that it harms a relationship to do it. But it is what it is. But I think that this person is going to end up in litigation, at least employing an attorney that's rather aggressive, and lay the smackdown on this girlfriend with a letter that says, you must do this by this time or we will litigate. And it can become criminal. So let's move on. The next article is in the continuity report. She-Hulk, attorney at Law Case Files, series director, and stars on Fashion, episode 5, and That Mask at the end. If you did not see it, go back and look at it. There might be spoilers ahead, so you might want to stop listening for a couple of minutes. I kind of dig this episode. I don't know what's going to happen when I click this, but Rotten Tomatoes is the source of this. Eric Amaya is the author of the article, and it's all about She-Hulk. And this particular episode, episode 5, it's neat, but there's something uncanny valley about the the presentation of She-Hulk. It comes across like she's slow moving or plodding, and kind of, I don't know, something other than just naturally doing everything that she's doing. I don't know why it is that way. It's almost intentional, I guess, to try and make us believe that bigger people move slower. Um, I suppose that's true. I don't know. I don't think that at that scale it's that apparent, but whatever. Totally focused on a trademark this episode. I mean, I just got done watching the episode. And it largely focused on a trademark case between Tatiana and She-Hulk. I thought it was interesting. If you're into this kind of stuff, you'll definitely dig the show. I just thought that it was really hilarious. And there is a person in here. Let me see if they actually have pictures of this, because I thought it was really interesting. They talk about, Tatiana's products are snake oil. And then at the very end, you see Daredevil's mask. If I'm ruining this for you, I'm sorry. But I warned you. So there was something else in here. I'm trying to find it. The designer of She-Hulk's new suit. It's not a super suit, but it's like Edna mode. The designer is just off the chain, like totally leaning into the arrogance that they are an artiste and you must respect them, and they don't make shit. They make quality products and you don't live up to it, so get out. But then She-Hulk's assistant partner, really, I mean, she's always there, sells the future of She-Hulk, and the designer steps up and develops a new series of suits. At the very end, we don't actually get to see She-Hulk in these new suits. And finally, the last article is Pizza Hut uses Italian taco hack to mock Taco Bell's Mexican pizza as it returns after being sold out for months. This is a supply chain thing for Taco Bell. They sell out so fast. If it wasn't for the fact that this got aggregated, I would probably not even realize that they're out there, and I will probably go and get some Italian pizzas or Mexican pizzas. Italian pizzas, I got this pizza place that I love. Totally dig it. Got a cool lunch special. I swing by as often as I can. Not as often as I want, but as often as I can. Taco Bell's beloved Mexican pizza returned as a permanent menu item this week. Pizza Hut poked fun at it by introducing a so-called Italian taco. The Italian taco, as it turns out, is just a regular slice of pizza folded at the corners to form a taco shape. So exactly how I eat pizza. So I guess I had an Italian taco yesterday. And that's it for today. I'm going to give credit and then I'm going to shut down the shop. And this is by Sarah Jackson over at Business Insider. And I'm gonna disconnect from the stream and I'm gonna go over to Taco Bell and get some Mexican pizza. Maybe it's still there, but based on what I've been told, people are buying like 50 at a time and freezing them. I don't know. I think they'd be perfect in an air fryer, because a microwave just will ruin it. It'll just become a mushy whatever. But I think an air fryer might be able to save it, because it'll cook the top again. It'll reheat radiation, the radiant heat will go through it, but it'll stay dry and underneath as the air fryer convex heat underneath. It might be perfect in an air fryer. My goodness, I'm so glad that I bought an air fryer. Am I going to go through this whole article? No, you can follow the link over to Business Insider and read Sarah Jackson's article, because I'm going to get out of here and go get a Mexican pizza. So if you're in my chat, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Mayor Watt says in chat, I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Oh, 6 p.m. tomorrow. I'll see you later.